Good evening, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Rashmita, and I'm the event planner for Microsoft Reactor Bengaluru, India. This session will run over the next 60 minutes, including Q&A. The session is being recorded and will be uploaded to our Reactor YouTube channel. I will share the link to our YouTube channel in the chat section soon. Before we begin, please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We are all here to learn together, so please be respectful of other people's views, understanding of differences, being kind and considerate in the way you engage. The chat will be open throughout, and we do encourage you all to participate. Also, please keep your mics muted during the session. I would now like to welcome Anna, our speaker for today's session. She has a vast experience on solution design, implementation, and product customization using Microsoft technologies, and she is working as a partner and tech lead at Soho Dragon. But for now, I will hand over to Anna to begin the session. Over to you, Anna.
Okay, yeah, let me share my screen. Um, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right. Hello, guys. Thank you for attending this session on a Wednesday evening. I know it is hard to get time out of your work responsibilities, getting on a session, but I truly appreciate your time for this session. So today I'll be talking about how to implement approvals with Power Automate. So this is kind of a specific topic, but as I have been through journey of implementing Power Automate approvals, I thought that, okay, I have done this journey for so many projects. Let me share on what I have learned in those implementations and how things can be done for implementing approvals in Power Automate. Because like you now that people are moving from on-prem to cloud, you will come across scenarios where there are some SharePoint Designer workflows, or moving from classic to modern, there would be like SharePoint Designer workflows or some custom workflows that you might have implemented for approvals. But now, as we have like Power Automate since last few years, it doesn't require you to do a lot of code in order to implement approval processes within your organization or for your customer. So that is why I'll share some insights on how approvals can be done with Power Automate, and how that can help you, and what lessons I learned during those implementations. All right, so let me just start with, as Rashmita already mentioned, so I won't focus on this slide, but just general contact information about me if you want to reach me out. Then today's agenda. So I'll take you through some overview of Power Automate, what actions are available, what triggers are available, what options can you implement with Power Automate approvals. Then we'll do a deep dive demo on implementing different types of approval. I have built some flows for the demo. So we'll run those flows, and we'll also understand how those flows are built. Then we'll do an approval with MS Teams, because the approvals are also tightly integrated with Microsoft Teams. So we'll know about more when we talk about it, on how it works, how you can also implement approvals using Microsoft Teams, because that also happens through Power Automate. And we'll also see a demo on Microsoft Teams approval flow. And then I'll share some lessons learned, like actual lessons learned on implementation of using Power Automate approvals from our projects. All right, so like, why do we have Power Automate approvals? To automate sign-off request and human decision-making in your workflows. So some of the examples of workflows that you can build for Power Automate could be like approve vacation requests, right? Because like you might be having intranet for your customers or for your organizations in your Office 365 environment, and vacation request is the most common thing that a small, medium, or large company would need it, right? So also, if you're using SharePoint Online, then there would be like documents, right? There would be a lot of documents stored in your SharePoint environment. And many types of document require a sign-off process or a business flow, which involves approval. So you can implement document approvals, right? Then there would be like every organization would have sometimes some type of like expense approval, which also can be implemented. So, but the scenarios are not just limited to this. These are just examples to give you an envisioning kind of a thing that, okay, these are the things I can implement with Power Automate. All right, so what actions? Like, I'm sure that you must be having a little overview of what Power Automate is. Power Automate has connectors called actions and triggers. Triggers are the ones which kick off the workflow, and then actions are the connectors which perform the actual steps in the workflow. Like what the workflow needs to be done is done by actions, right? So create an approval is one of the action which creates an approval based on the details that you provide in the create approval action. Then you also have like start and wait for approval. So if you want to create an approval and as well as wait for the approval at that same point of time, then you'll use start and wait for approval rather than using create approval. And then you have wait for approval. So for example, if you want to create an approval, then perform few actions and then wait for the approval. Then you will use the combination of create approval and wait for approval. Otherwise, you will use start and wait for approval. So these are the out-of-box actions that are available within Power Automate for you to implement approvals. All right. Also, as opposed to other actions in Power Automate, you can't use HTML to do the rich formatting in the content of your approval request. You need to use markdown syntax, which there's a good documentation provided by Microsoft on that, on how to do the markdown syntax to format your approval request content. So all of the three actions will require you to use markdown syntax to provide the rich formatting to the content of your approval request. All right. So there are 4 types of approval which you can configure in the approval actions. On those 3 approval actions, we saw you can configure those actions to have any one of these 4 types of approval. So first is approve, reject, everyone must approve. So here, whenever user gets and request, approver gets and request to approve, they'll get 2 options to select, approve or reject. And then each approver in the flow needs to complete that request. Like for example, if the approval request has 3 approvers, then all those 3 approvers have to provide their decision in the request. Then the next is approve, reject, first to respond. So same as the first action, the approver will get approve and reject options while they want to provide their decisions on the request. But here only the first one will only, like for example, there are 3 approvers. If the first person kind of like responds to the approval request, then the approval is done. It requires only one person to respond to the request. So it depends on your scenario, right? Sometimes the approval requires all the approvers to provide decision, and sometimes approval request required only one approver to provide the decision, and that's enough for the workflow to go ahead, right? So based on your requirements, you can use any of those types. Now, for example, you don't want to use approve and reject, or you want additional options to be given to the approver to select that. For example, if I also want to add resubmit, like allow the approver to resubmit the request. Now, in the first 2 options, the approver will not get the option to resubmit. So in that case, you have to use custom responses where you can provide the custom responses as approve, reject, or resubmit. So that's one kind of scenario where you could use custom responses. And also, if you want to provide not like approve, reject, or something like 5%, 10%, 12% discount, for the sales approval request, something like that. You can also provide that kind of options as well. So that also has two types. One is custom responses, which will wait for all the responses from the approver. So for example, if there are 5 approvers, the flow will wait for all 5 approvers to respond to that approval request. And if you just wait for one response, then even though there are 5 approvers, it will only wait for the first approver. And once any one of the approver has provided the decision, the workflow will go ahead. Okay, so this, it is very important to understand this 4 approval types, because based on that you will have your approval. This is the base of your approval implementation. Not very complex, but few nuances you have to take care in understanding this approval types. Okay, then okay, you have figured out that okay, what approval type you want to use, right? Then you'll come to a point where you will need to know, okay, whom I can assign these approvals to. So you can like assign approvals to all of your users in your Microsoft 365 tenant, including the guest users. So that's a good thing about it. So guest users are not left out here. So guest users that are added to your Dataverse or Azure Active Directory tenant, they could also be assigned the approvals. Also, as well as you can assign approvals to groups. For example, if you have groups for your department already defined in your tenant, and then you want to leverage those groups to assign approvals to those groups, then rather than assigning approvals to those individual users by putting their individual names within the flow, you can just put the group name in the flow and then have the flow handle to send the approvals to all of the group members. So yeah, so that is how you can assign approvals to users, including guest users as well as Microsoft 365 groups. For assigning approvals to groups, there are some nuances you need to take care of, which we'll discuss in the further slides when we come to the specific slide. All right, so let's talk about, as I mentioned, let's talk about like what nuances you need to take care of while assigning approval to the Microsoft 365 groups. Okay, so like it would work a little differently when the approvals are assigned to multiple M365 groups or to M365 groups as well as some users in the same request. So for example, if you have your approval type selected as first to respond approvals, where it only requires one person to respond and then approval requests get completed, in that case, and you have assigned it to two groups, group 1 and group 2. So at least one user from both the groups, like any of both groups, needs to respond to the request, and then the request will get completed. So even though you are giving two groups in first to respond scenario, you need just one person from any of those groups to approve. Then here you are in another scenario where you are selecting approval type as everyone must respond to the approval, where you want the people all people to respond to that request. It's kind of tricky here. So for example, if you are sending the request to two groups, then one person from group 1 and one person from group 2, if they both approve, then the approval request is considered to be complete. So it's not like that, okay, all users of the both of the groups needs to respond. One users from both groups needs to respond for the approval request to complete. Okay, so this is a little tricky one. Then first to respond, which sends approve, which to whom the request is assigned is group 1 and a user 1. So here we have group and a user combination. Okay, so at least one user 1 or the users from the group needs to respond. So here only one user needs to respond in this scenario. And when you want like everyone must respond to the approval and you have a user and a group combination in the assign to section, both the user 1 and one user from the group one needs to respond to the approval request for the request to be completed. Okay, so that's how it would work. So it is a little tricky. You might have the expectation that, okay, it will wait for decision from all the group members. It's not like that. It in any case, one user from that group needs to respond. All right. So there are few limitations when you are assigning uh, the the approvals to groups. So one is you need your M365 group to be email enabled. Only email enabled M365 groups are supported. Teams not like whenever an approval is assigned to the user would get notified in the Teams if notifications are enabled from the approval action. But in this case, the user will not get notified. So you may need to explicitly notify the user that, okay, the approval has been created. So there are actions in Teams to post a feed notification to the user. So you might have to implement some additional logic to that. And the group must allow to receive emails from external senders because the approvals are being sent from uh, the Microsoft no reply kind of an email. You need to like allow the external senders to send emails to the group. So these are three limitations you might want to take in consideration before planning to assign your approvals to a group. Okay, so that was about like what things you need to take care of while assigning approvals to the group. Then what type of approval patterns you can implement using using the Power Automate approval. So first is very simple, single approval. If you just want single approval from multiple people or only one person, then you can just add the start and wait for response action and then assign it to required users or groups, and then you are done. You can also implement multi-level. So multi-level is you require first approval from certain department or a user, then second approval from another department or a user, and third approval, and so on, right? You can go to nth level on considering the flow limits, but like I think you can at least do 10 approvals within the flow easily. So in that as well, you can also do sequential where I said that, okay, from this department, then from the other department, and then from the other department. Or if you want to send approvals to different departments or users all together in parallel, then also you can do it. So that's the flow capabilities where you can add parallel actions and implement the approvals parallelly as well if you're not looking for a sequential implementation. All right. Then the dataverse also comes into picture because the approvals data is stored in dataverse automatically by Power Automate. So the flows which are like now, I assume you might be aware of default and non-default environments in Power Platform and dataverse. So there is default environment and non-default environments you might create for your own purposes. So if the flows are created in non-default environment, dataverse database, which is required to store the approvals, will get created when your first approval runs from that environment. So for example, if you have first approval flow created in that non-default environment, and when you run that flow and the approval is created in that first flow, that's when the database will get created. So why this needs to be taken care of is because the first approval to whom that approval will be assigned will require some admin privileges so that the dataverse environment gets hosted. So like usually you won't have the actual user being assigned for that approval because like you will be building your flows and testing it by yourself first before getting it to the actual users. So for example, if you run into permissions issue that, okay, I'm creating a flow which is the first one of a kind approval flow in that environment, and you're facing some issues in implementation, you might want to check that, okay, if you have the required permissions for creating the Dataverse database. All right, if flows are created in default environment, then you don't need to worry about Dataverse because Dataverse database is automatically created by Power Automate beforehand. And then also learn about licensing, especially when we are talking about Power Platform. So because that works a little differently, you need to understand in order to build your flows or build your apps in Power Apps or Power Automate, you need to understand how licensing work, because to make your flow long running without any roadblocks being faced by your users, and and then also you don't run across limitations after building your flow, it is very important for you to understand how the licensing works, right? So any license that grants user access to Power Automate, that license is able to use the approval. So it's not a premium connector, it's a standard connector. So so that's good news. And then user can respond to an approval request from Outlook email, Microsoft Teams Adaptive Card, or Power Automate Action Center if they have a Power Automate license, or Office 365 or Dynamics 365 license. So here, if user is using Outlook email to respond to the request, they need the license to use the Outlook emails. If they are using Microsoft Teams, they need license to use Microsoft Teams, and they want to respond via Power Automate Action Center, they need a license to use Power Automate. Okay, so yeah, standard connectors, so no premium license is required, but Outlook, Microsoft Teams, or Power Automate license is required, which is usually included in the Office 365 Power Automate or Dynamics 365 license. All right, so it's showtime. I'll take you through some of the Power Automate approvals that I've built for this session, and we'll run those flows, and I'll show how those flows are built, and let's dive into that. Okay, so I have few flows built here. So first we'll go through vacation requests and multi-level approvals. For storing the data of my approvals, I'm using SharePoint because of my comfort zone with SharePoint. But if you want to use Dataverse to store the data, feel free to do that. Even Dynamics 365, like a lot of connectors are there to make the Power Automate flows. You are not just limited to using SharePoint or anything, like even Dropbox. Like if you want approvals for your Dropbox document, then also you can do that. So like Power Automate has like ample of connectors to work with ample of applications. Okay, so let me show you what I have in SharePoint. So I have like a demo list created for vacation requests, not too fancy here, but just to suffice for our demo. Okay, so a user can submit a vacation request from a SharePoint list, and that will create a vacation request for approval request for the user's manager. So for example, if I'm submitting a vacation request for myself, my manager will get an approval request email and a Teams notification on that, okay, I have submitted a request, and the user can approve or reject that request. All right, then let's go and create a vacation request. Okay. And save my record. So my Power Automate workflow is configured to run on item creation of this list. So my manager, who is another fellow test user, will get the approval request. So let's see. It will take a while for the approval request to arrive. Till then, let's see let me show you the flow. This is our flow. All right, the trigger of the flow is when a new item is created in SharePoint list. So my flow will trigger every time when a new request is created in the vacation request list. Then it is getting my manager details using the get manager action, and it is getting from the M365 tenant. Then, as I mentioned before, we have start and wait for an approval action. And here, as I just have one approver in my scenario for this demo, I have just selected the approval type as first to respond. So if I had like four approvers here and I wanted the decision of all four approvers, then I would have selected everyone. One must respond. But as we have a first to respond, there is just one approver, I have selected the first to respond. Then I'm putting the title of my approval request where it's a vacation request and whatever title I provided in my vacation request in the list record. Okay. Then assign to is the email of my manager. So mail which is fetched by get manager action. Okay. Then put in the few details from the SharePoint list here to include it within the approval request. So the approver doesn't have to open the record by still we are giving the link to the record to the approver. So if they want to go here and view the details of the record in the list, they can do that. Okay. So these are some default options that you can configure for it. Then you can also configure requester. So usually if you don't put the requester, it would put the name of user who is configured in the connections. So it's good practice to put the requester name here because not always the person who created flow would be the requester, right? It would be the person who is creating the records. So that is why I have the created by email. So person who created that record in the SharePoint list will be the requester. So keep that in mind. Enable notifications if configured to yes, then a user gets an email for the approval request as well as a team notification. So for both things the user will get. So via Teams or email, the user can provide that approval decision. And then they don't need to, like they can provide their decisions just from the email or Teams. If they want to go further, then only they need to like go into SharePoint or Power Automate. Then if you want to enable reassignment, so for example, if approver has received the request, but they don't want to provide a decision, they want someone else to provide the decision, then you can enable the reassignment. If you don't, then approver will not be able to reassign this request. But if you enable it from Power Automate approval section or from Teams, they can reassign the request. Then you can also include attachments within the approval request. So they would be sent along in the Teams notification or the email. So, but I like to kind of put a link to the document rather than sending the attachment. So if you have your documents in OneDrive or SharePoint, you can put the link in the details section rather than sending actual file in the attachment. Okay. And then I have a condition action which sees that, okay, what is the outcome of the approver's decision? So that's why I'm comparing the outcome as approved. If the outcome is approved, if the approver has approved it, then it will do this set of actions. If the approver has rejected, it will do this set of actions. So here for approval, I have a different email content, and for rejection, I have a different email content. I'm notifying the requester that, okay, your vacation request is approved or rejected, whatever the case may be. And then I'm providing details that, okay, your request is approved by this and this approver, or your request is rejected by this and this approver. So here, as like I only had one approver, I'm just taking the name of the first approver. But for example, if you have multiple approvers who need to provide their approval decision, then what you need to do is like you need to look through all of the approver names. Here I'm just using the first from the array, but if you want all the approver names, then you have to look through all the approver names. So that's a little detail on how you need to do it. And then I'm updating status back based on approver's decision back to the SharePoint list. So if it's approved, then I'm updating the status to approved. If it's rejected, I'm updating the status to rejected. Okay, so as simple as that. Let's see, approval request has arrived. So here you see that, okay, I have gotten a notification on Teams that, okay, approval request is sent to me. This is the test user, okay, who is set as the manager of my user. So it says that, okay, Anna Jhaveri has submitted the request from this to this date, and it is requested by Anna Jhaveri and pending response from the approver. And this is also the link to the SharePoint list item if we want to kind of like see if the approver wants to see the record. And they can provide their comments and provide the decision. And then if they don't want to approve by themselves and want to reassign it to someone else, they can do it reassign as well, because we enabled reassignment. And let's go to the email. Let me show you the email as well. So here is the email that has arrived for the same request. So from the email itself, the user can see the details that, okay, approval is requested by this user. This is the details linked to the approval, which we included in the approval request, and these are the contents. Okay, so this is kind of like an actionable message in Outlook. So user can like reject or approve or whatever they want to, and then they can submit their details. So once they submit, they get this message that, okay, that the request, the user provided the decision as approved and when it was submitted. And here from here as well, the request has been updated that, okay, the decision has been provided by the approver. So like it's kind of synced between Teams and Outlook. And then the actual user who submitted the request will also get notified that, okay, your vacation request was approved. Okay, so this kind of a simple workflow. So here in Teams as well, this is, by the way, this is approvals app. We'll talk more in the further slides. So here you can kind of see the approvals that you have sent or the approvals that you have received from the Teams app. Okay, so quickly, I went through the vacation approval request, very simple, just single approval. Now let's look at a little more complex scenario here. So here I have like parallel and sequential approvals implemented in the same flow to give you an feel on how to do that within flows. All right, so here also I have like expense approval scenario for this demo. So here I'm just taking the details of the expenses from the user, and then my expenses would be submitted to my manager and to finance department. And if they both approve it, then I'm like submitting that further request to a CXO. So for example, you might have like scenario that, okay, your expenses must be approved by your manager and then finance. And then after, if they both approve, then it goes for example, CTO or CIO, whoever it is. So just a demo scenario here. So same here. The trigger of the flow is when an item is created in expense approval list, my flow will trigger. I'm getting the manager of the user who created the item, then assigning the approval to the manager as well as the finance department. So here I have a little different approval type because I wanted a resubmit option to be provided to the approvers. I'm using custom responses and wait for one response. Here as well, I don't need all the members to approve, and that's why I have just selected wait for one response. If you have scenario of all approvers to approve with multiple approvers, then you select the other option, which is wait for all responses. Okay, so here I have my custom options, approve, reject, and resubmit. Same way in the other workflow, I have provided title, assigned to is my manager from this get manager action, then providing details of the approval that, okay, it is submitted by this user and the amount, expense amount to be approved is this, and the link to the item. In same way, for finance department, I have the same options for approve, reject, and resubmit. Here, I'm assigning the approval to the finance team M365 group, because as I mentioned before, that you might already have groups created for the departments within your tenant. Why not leverage that, right? Rather than providing the names of approvers here or storing the name somewhere else and then fetching it and providing it here, right? Rest of the things are same in this approval. The only difference is the assigned to field, which is an M365 group. Here, it's a email of the user. Okay, so that's about the parallel approval. So this is a parallel action. So this is how you can add a parallel branch, and then you select your action to be executed parallelly. So start and wait for approval. This is how you do it. And for example, if I required a third approval, then I would do this uh, third parallel approval in addition to manager and finance team. Okay. So once that is done, the flow will, once both approval decisions are provided, uh, the flow will go ahead. So while we are going through the flow, let me just create a request for you to show it for a demo. Amount, for example, 600, and save. So my flow will start running in background to trigger. Okay, so here we were. So we have the approvals for manager and finance team. Then we have, like, we are checking the outcome of both the approvals, that okay, what was the outcome. If both are approved, then only we want to go ahead. So that is why I have an and condition here, and outcomes of both the approval actions to be equal to approved. And if that's approved, then I'm sending it to CXO. Now for CXO, there isn't, for example, there isn't a requirement for resubmit. Then you can just use approve or reject. And if you want to allow the further users to resubmit, then you can always use the custom responses, right? So the rest of the things are same here. I'm just using a static user, which in real scenarios, I know you might not be using a static user, but you can store your approvers in database or M365 groups and you can use it here, right? So yeah, rest of the configuration is same as we talked before. And once the approval is created for the approver, I have like interim like status that okay, stage one is completed. Stage one approval is where manager and finance team are kind of completing that approval. Okay, so that's why I'm updating the status back to the SharePoint list that, okay, stage one approval is completed. And then if the CXO approves, I have a condition here that, okay, CXO has completed the approval and like they have provided the approved decision, then the requester will be notified that, okay, your expense approval request is complete, and finally the status will be set to approve. Now, here I think I have made a mistake while I'm doing a demo. I realized that, okay, this should be here, because I purposely made that mistake to show you why the things are required upside down like this. Because start and wait for approval will pause the flow, like it won't go ahead until the CXO provides the decision. And we want to like kind of update the stage one approved condition uh, just after the decision is provided by manager and the finance team, right? And then once CXO approves, we want to we want to set the status as approved, right? So that is why first we'll update the status and then send the approval to CXO. If we had the CXO approval before and then stage one update, what would happen that this status would be set after CXO provides the decision. So it doesn't make sense really updating the stage one approved status after the CXO approval, where the request is actually approved, like 100% by all approval, right? So that one thing I wanted to explain, that, okay, when you are using start and wait for approval, the flow sets to a pause. It will wait for that action to complete. All right, so let's see the approver would have received the expense approval request. So this is one user who is set as my manager, so that that user is receiving the approval request, and he would also have received the email, as you can see, the expense approval from Anna Jhaveri, same as we saw in the vacation request. Then now I have like another user who is the member of the finance team. This not this one, yeah, this one. Okay. Yeah, so this user is the member of the finance team, and that is how you see that, okay, there was other user who was set as my manager, was assigned the request, as well as the finance team members. You see here it is sent to finance team members. So you can see that, okay, two parallel approvals are created. One is to manager and one is to finance team members. Now here you might notice that, okay, this approval is looking a little different from this approval. So what happens is, like, I created some of the flows for the demo today, and also the group today. So it is still, the group emails are not still enabled for the actionable messages. And when your emails are not enabled for the actionable messages, your approval emails will look like this. So if you click on approve, it will take you to the Power Automate approval, and it will not allow you to approve within the email, as opposed to the case here where you can approve from your email itself. You don't have to navigate to the other screen when you click on the approve. So that is the difference. So sometimes what happens is, if you have some email security enabled, and then the approval and actionable messages are blocked by that email security, you will see difference in how the approval looks like. So you may want to like bypass that security if you want your approver to provide the decision directly from the email. So let's approve as a finance team member. So this is the Power Automate approvals screen, from where also you can provide your decision. So as a finance team member, I'm providing my decision. And then in the other browser tab, I'm providing a decision as being the manager of the user who submitted the request. Okay, so I'm approving with both of the users for the demo purpose. And let's go back to our expense approval here. All right, so this is still in process. It will get updated to stage one, not stage one because I changed, but now now that the manager and the finance team member have approved, the CXO user will receive the expense approval request. So here it is the email from for the CXO users, and the user would also eventually receive the approval. Here is the notification. Teams notification. So we saw the email notification on the email as well as the Teams notification. It is taking a while to open. Okay, so let's provide our decision from the Teams. This time it has a link to the record and it says let's say approved. So this is finally approved by manager approving it, finance team member approving it, and then the CXO approving it. And we'll go back to our record to see. All right, so it is set to approve, right? So let me take you to the flow run just to show you an overview of how the flow ran. All right, so item was created, it got the manager details, then two approvals were created parallelly for the manager and the finance team member. Then it is checking for the condition, which checks if both manager and the finance team member provided that decision. Then it created the CXO uh, approval, and then it updated the stage, which doesn't make sense, right? So it should be above it and then approval below it, and then um, yeah, and then it sent an email and it update the status finally to approved. Okay, so that was that. I hope that kind of makes sense. So that was some two quick demo of approvals, like implementing a simple approval and then implementing multi-level approval, which has both the parallel and the sequential approval, and using like approve and reject options, and as well as the custom options. Okay, so that was that. Let's go back to our presentation.
Yeah, and I have a quick question here.
Sure.
For different- To update the status,
Mhm.
is necessary to use the HTTP? Can I use the item
No,
update?
it is not necessary. So that's a good question. So why I'm using this HTTP is there are two options. One is you can use the update item action of SharePoint to update the status back to SharePoint list, or you can use HTTP. The only advantage that HTTP has over update item is, for example, you have a lot of required fields within your SharePoint list, and you want to update just the status value. Still you will have to provide the values of those required fields, though those fields have not been updated. You will be required to put the values in. That's how update item works. So that's why I prefer to use send HTTP, because I want to update the status, just provide the status value uh, which needs to be updated, rather than providing values for other required fields, which doesn't make sense, right? To be provided again within the update item. So that's kind of my personal preference to use send HTTP. That's why I use like send HTTP versus update item. But still, you can kind of use update item. It's just that you will have to provide the values of those required fields.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
for example, in vacation request, I had start date and end date as required fields. And if I'm updating item for the vacation request, still have to provide the values of the start date and end date because those are required fields. Though with approval being updated, approval status being updated, there is no update to the start and the end dates. Make
One more
sense?
thing I have seen, like on the notification on the Teams, right?
Yeah.
We have set up anything on that here to get the reminder on the Teams app for the
Uh,
upload.
yeah, so you have to enable this property, enable notifications. If you set it to no, then you will not get notified about it. You'll have to go to approval sections of the team and then look at your approval. If you have set it to yes, then you will get the team's notification.
What are the approvals you're going to send it email, and those will be there on the Teams as well? All the
Yes, in
emails?
Teams as well. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The approvals that are created with start and wait, or create an approval and wait for approval. So the out of box actions which Power Automate applies, and if you create an approval by that, then yes, you will see it in the approvals app of Teams.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Hi,
Okay.
I have a
Yeah.
quick question actually.
Sure.
You're using Power Automate Flow for the entire process, end-to-end process. There is an option of logic apps, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, there is a certain limitation in logic app, but is there any limitations like only 1,000 requests can be processed in a minute or something like that?
Yeah, so it will depend on your Power Automate license. Like, for example, if you're using Microsoft 365 E3 license, then you have you have a limit of 2,000 API requests per day per user. So like if your flow has a lot of, like, if it is too large and it kind of uses one account across the flow, then you might hit that limit. So for example, like your flow is of around 500 actions, then you might end up kind of like having that limitations. So if you're using Power Automate Plan 1, Plan 2, that kind of license, I don't think you will run around limitations. But if you're just using M365 license, then you might hit the limitations in very large flows. And the workaround of working around on those API limits is like you can use different service accounts for different flows. So that's how you have multiple accounts and you are not restricted to one user API request. So yeah, so that is why, as I mentioned in the earlier slides, is when you're working with Power Automate or Power Apps, you need to understand how the licensing model works and what are the limits of each licensing model, so that you can design your flow accordingly. Make sense?
Yes.
Mhm. Okay, all right. Let me go ahead with the slides. All right, so that's how we covered that, okay, how we can create approvals with Power Automate. But there is a lot more with approvals you can do with Teams. So let's see on what we have in store with Teams. So the approvals that we kind of saw in our demo, that is the approvals native Teams app. So like as a user, you have to add that native approvals Teams app to your Microsoft Teams as a user, and then you will be able to see those approvals and manage your approvals from Microsoft Teams. So in as like what the approvals we saw in the demo. In addition to that, also, if you want to like create a quick approvals, which just requires an approval, no pre or post approval actions, you don't need any of that. You just require simple plain approvals, which you quickly submit, and then want to get a response from the approvers. Then you can directly also create approval requests from the teams using this Teams app. So I'll just show you in a bit on how to do that. So the approvals which we would create directly from Teams are also supported by Power Automate infrastructure. It's just that you won't have an actual flow which is doing it. You are just doing it on the fly from the Teams. So it doesn't require a flow with approval actions and all that stuff. And this is the case where you don't want any processing to be done before creating your approval request, or if you don't want any processing to be done after the approval request is approved or rejected, that's when you will use this for some quick dirty things kind of a scenario. And then for any case, if you're not able to see the approvals app in the apps menu of Teams, it might be disabled by your Teams administrator in your tenant. So that could be the reason if you're wondering that, okay, I don't see the Teams app in my Microsoft Teams. So so that's about the Microsoft Teams app approvals that I'll show in a demo in a bit on how to use it. Other than that, you might also want to like post approvals in channels. For example, like you don't want to like post an approval to individual users in chat or in the approvals team app or in the email, but you want to submit an approval to a group within a channel, so user browsing through the channel can also know about it, right? So that you can do by creating a flow and posting the approval in the channel. So there are two ways to do that kind of approval. One is you use create approval and wait for approval actions, right? We saw start and wait for approval actions, but in this demo, we'll see how to use create approval and wait for approval actions. So these are those actions. And then there is also another option where the Power Automate approvals are not involved, but adaptive cards are involved to send approvals to Teams channel or a user, and then wait on response for that adaptive card. So that for that also we have an action called post adaptive cards team channel and wait for the response. All right, so let's do a quick demo on those two scenarios of creating an approval for specifically for Teams channels or using the flow. All right, let me take you to the SharePoint. Again, here also I'm using a SharePoint list for my demo purpose. So I have a SharePoint list where user can submit a request for Teams provisioning. So for example, if user needs that, okay, they need a new team to be created within Microsoft Teams, they need to provide the title of the team, description of the team, specify whether that would be a private team or a public team, and provide the owners and the members of that team. And if the request gets approved, the team gets provisioned within Microsoft Teams. And if request gets rejected, then the user will be notified by email that, okay, your request is rejected. So let's quickly dive into the flow. So first I'll show you using the approval actions within Teams channel, and then we'll see the adaptive card scenario. Okay, so let me first create a sample record so that we get the flow running. Okay, I want a team to be created with name test4, and then this description is test demo. And then, yeah, I want a private team. I want myself to be the owner of that team. And then I want the CXO user to be the member of that team. And I'll save my record. Here also, I have when item is created, trigger for my flow. So let's go there and understand what is done within that flow. So here I'm specifically sending the approvals to the Teams channel. So till now we saw that, okay, the approvals are being sent to the approvals app. So this is the approvals app, which is available in Microsoft Teams. You have to go to the apps and add that app within your team. Then only you will get notified about the approvals created. Otherwise, you will not get notified. So I have added that approvals app, and I'm able to manage my see my approvals which I have requested or which are already approved, and when that was, who sent it, and those kind of things. Okay, so let's get back to the demo. So here I'm creating an approval. So here I want approve reject buttons in my flow and only one user to respond. That is why the approval type is first to respond. Then I'm providing the title that, okay, this is the new Teams request I need, and it is assigned to a static user, but you can use a group or fetch the user from somewhere else to be the approval assigned to. And then here I'm using little markdown syntax in order to like kind of like format my request. And then I'm providing the link to the item and the link description. Okay, so this is just creating the approval. The approval is not sent yet. So to actually send the approval to the users in the channel, what I'm doing as a flow bot, I'm posting that approval as an adaptive card in that channel. So here I can post it via as a user, Flowbot or Power Virtual Agents, where I want to post it within the chat of Flowbot or within a group chat or within a channel. So I'm posting it in a channel. Then in what teams I want to do it. Then in what channel of that team I want to do it. Okay. So I have a team for admins and it has a specific channel for the approval. That's where I'm posting this adaptive card. And the whole approval thing will be posted in an adaptive card. And then like I'll explain this further when you need the card ID. So this is a newly introduced feature, so I'll talk later about it. So I have posted that card in the channel. After posting that, I'll ask my flow to wait on that approval. So how will the flow identify, okay, on what approval I have to wait for, right? So that is why I'm providing the approval ID from the dynamic content, which is for this approval, the approval ID, which is created by this action. All right. And then I'll check, okay, if if the outcome is approved, I'm going ahead and creating the team's channel, adding the owners, adding the members within the team, and then also notifying users on team that, okay, your request is approved and team is created, and then updating status back to the SharePoint list. Okay, and in case of reject, I'm notifying the user that, okay, your request is rejected by so-and-so person, and what comments they provided in their rejection, reject while they rejected it. All right, so let's go quickly to the approval. All right, so I have teams here and I have this approvals channel where the approval is created. Yeah, let's go to the. Okay, so yeah, this is turned off. All right, let me explain you the another adaptive card option as well. So I had the previous flow turned off. That is why the adaptive cards one has turned on. So the adaptive cards one has triggered. So I have the same flow triggered on the same list, and showing you team's approval using both of the scenarios. Here, as opposed to the other flow where I'm creating an approval, posting that approval as an adaptive card to the channel, and then waiting for the approval, here I am posting my own custom adaptive card to the channel. So here, actual Power Automate approvals are not involved. I have created an adaptive card for my approval, and then that is posted via flow to the team's channel. And then the flow is waiting on the response of that adaptive card. So I will select that, okay, do I want to post it as a flow bot or a Power virtual agent? Where I want to post it, whether I want to post it in a channel or a chat with Flowbot or a group chat. So I want to post it in a channel. That is why I've selected the channel. I assume that you might have a familiarity with adaptive card because I'll not go into details, but adaptive cards are like UI components which you can easily use between Power Automate and Teams and as well as email. So that's a quick, nice way of providing UI components to the user to input or provide that decision kind of a thing. So here I created an adaptive card in Adaptive Card Designer, then copied its JSON and put it in a message here. I'm putting the request details from the dynamic content within the adaptive card, like who submitted it, what is the details of the request, and that kind of stuff. And then I have like approve and reject buttons. Then update message is the message is which will be shown to the user after user has provided the decision. And then in which team and channel I want to post it. So that's that. And then in the condition, I'm checking, okay, what was the decision of the user provided in the adaptive card? So here, this is a little tricky because in dynamic content, you will not get the adaptive card options, what you have provided in here. So I had to build the expressions uh, to get the dynamic content uh, within the flow. So that's a little tricky. And I'm checking the value if it's approved. Then I'm provisioning team and updating the status back to SharePoint and also notifying users about it. And in terms of reject, also notifying users and updating status back to SharePoint. Okay, so let's go and look at our adaptive card. So this is the admin's channel, admin's team and approvals channels. This is my adaptive card. So I have designed a very simple card, but there is all very fancy stuff you can do within adaptive cards. So you can explore that by yourself, but you can really make it look attractive. Here I have two buttons in my adaptive card, approve and reject. So I'll kind of approve it. And thanks for your response. This is the update message that I had provided in here in my post and adaptive card action. So that is why you see that message after user has provided that response. Okay, so that was like a simple adaptive card. You see that as an approver, I could provide my response. So any user who is a member of this channel will able to provide that decision in the adaptive card. So it makes sense to send the adaptive cards to private channel rather than to any public team or public channel. Okay, because there would be a lot of users and then it doesn't make sense to open the adaptive card approvals for the all people in organization. Okay, so that was that. So let's see, the team will get provisioned shortly. So here you go. So after approval, as an approver, I had provisioned the team. So the team has gotten provisioned here. And I'm being added as an owner and the CXO user is added as a member within the team. So yeah, so Power Automate is that simple. So if I had to write code for doing that, there would be like 1,000 lines of code to in order to get this done, right? With Power Automate, it was just an hour, half an hour effort to build a flow like this. So that's why I love Power Automate, especially for non-coders like me. It really becomes simple to implement this kind of scenarios which are supported by Power Automate. All right, so this was the adaptive card scenario I showed you. Then I still have to show you the scenario for the team's approval with using the actual approval actions. So let's go and see that. And I'll just create one more request for. Okay, so revisiting you to this flow again, like we had item creation. We are creating approval using the create approval action and then posting that as an adaptive card to the channel. And then we are waiting for the approval and then based on approval decision, we are doing the other stuff of provisioning the channel and all. All right, so here we are in the admins channel, admins team and approval channel. You can see that, okay, the approval request is being created here. So one thing that you see here is the many approval requests got changed. This is because of Power Automate, because I had like turned off the flow and created all of this items afterwards, and you turn on the flow will still trigger for the older items when the flow was turned off. Like for example, I have turned off the flows, created two items, and then again turning on the flow. Still the flow will run for the previous two items. So that is one thing you should take care of while doing flows. And here I can provide approve and reject decision, and these are the details using the create approval actions which are put in the channel as an adaptive card. So there is a subtle difference that, okay, you see approvals within the channel, and then you see approvals within the approvals app in the Teams. So so it's your call on whether what type of scenario you have and what type of approval you want to implement. So let's get back to the PPT. So we did a quick demo on implementing Teams channel approval using an adaptive card and using the Power Automate approval actions and posting it as an adaptive card. And we also did like an from scratch scenario for adaptive card. So comparison of both two approaches. If you're using start and approval and wait for approval, what it uses inbuilt adaptive card for approval. So if you want to design it by yourself, you don't have an option. You have to use whatever this action provides in terms of adaptive card. You cannot change the design of adaptive card. It's easy to use. You don't have to design your adaptive card in the adaptive card designer. So that saves you time on that if you're not looking for a custom design. And people who are configured in the approval can only provide their decision on that approval. So for example, even if I posted that approval in the channel, but if users who are mentioned in the approvals assigned to field are 2 users and the 5 users are member of that channel, only 2 users who are assigned the approval can only provide their decision on that adaptive card within Teams. The other 3 users can't because they were not mentioned while creating the approval in Power Automate. And it also has option to wait for everyone to respond, like the approval type where everyone has to approve kind of a scenario. And it is integrated with approvals app in the team. So whichever approvals are submitted in the channel using this create approval and wait for approval, they also appear in the approvals app. So that is there. But things are different when you're doing your custom adaptive card. So adaptive card design is customizable as per your needs. So you get more control over design here. You need more configuration as you need to design your card. You can provide your update message when you set the update to yes and provide your update message. Then you can, any member of the channel will be able to provide the decision on the adaptive card, as opposed to the other approach where only users who are assigned the approval can provide the decision in the approval card. Then here you don't have options to wait for everyone. So whoever first provides the decision, the approval is done, the flow will go ahead. So that's kind of a catch that, okay, if you have scenario where you only want first approvers decision, then only do adaptive cards in channel. And the approvals that you create using your custom adaptive cards, they don't appear in the Teams approvals app because that is your own custom thing implemented and it does not uses any of the approval Power Automate approvals thing. So they will not appear in the approvals app. So yeah, that was about the comparison of doing the approvals within channel using the Power Automate approvals and using the custom adaptive card. So there, still I showed you the demo. There are still shortcomings in that scenario. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. So adaptive card, current latest version of adaptive card is 1.5, but in the Teams, you can still use only 1.4 version. Only one person can, if you're using custom adaptive cards, only one person can kind of respond to that adaptive cards. So that's kind of like a limitation, as I previously mentioned. Adaptive cards are not searchable within Teams. So if you're searching for some specific old approval, you won't be able to search using the search feature in the Teams. Then update message, which you are providing that, okay, your approver has provided the decision and you want to update the card to show the update message. You can just provide a static message there. You can't like provide a message that, okay, this approver provided this decision, because you have to provide it within the post and adaptive card action. So there is no option, much option to use a formatted nice message. provided after the approval to the users. And the approvals, like the flow times out after 30 days. And if your flow is waiting for the response from the approvers till 30 days, your approval will get expired and you won't have any option to get it back. So it would kind of become an option. So I'll talk that in our further slides on how to manage approval beyond 30 days. All right. There is also a new action that has come in, that the flow thing that I talked, that okay, flow will expire in 30 days and flow will not wait on the user's response after 30 days. What you can do, there is a new action trigger called when someone responds to an adaptive card. So you can use that so that there will be an altogether different flow for which will wait on adaptive card response rather than same flow posting an adaptive card and waiting for the response. So I would like to kind of suggest you to use that as well. That would be more helpful in this kind of scenarios where you are using custom adaptive card. All right, so some of the lessons learned in my projects where I implemented Power Automate approval. So I'll just quickly share those with you. So one is in the approve reject, everyone must approve scenario. If the approval is assigned, let's say to the 5 approvers, and if any of one user rejects that approval, the approval will get completed. So it will only wait for 5 users if there are like everyone is kind of approving. If one of the users kind of like rejected in between, the approval will complete and flow will go ahead. So that thing you need to take care in mind, or use the custom responses, wait for all responses. So that will not stop on rejection. So that's one thing you could do. Then usually, for example, if you're doing like an approval process implementation, you might also want to send reminders to the approval, right? For example, approver might have seen it, haven't provided a decision within a week, and then it may get lost within notifications and emails. And it's a nice to have thing to send reminders, but unfortunately, the Power Automate approvals doesn't have something inbuilt to configure to send the reminders. You have to implement your own logic to do that. So you can build a separate flow which has a recurrence trigger. So for example, it executes every week, and you are storing that approval data somewhere else in SharePoint or Dataverse. You can query your approval data and see that, okay, the approval was last created when, and the status is still pending and your approver has not provided the decision. Then send the reminders. But this is all your custom logic to implement it. Power Automate by itself does not have anything to send reminders. So you need to carve out your custom logic to send reminders if you need to from your applications. Then email security, blocking email approval. So we saw this kind of a screen, right, where approve reject was not happening from the email. And if I clicked on the approve reject buttons, the user was taken to the Power Automate approval section. So this sometimes happens due to email security. And if you still want your approvers to be provide their decisions within the email itself and not getting navigated somewhere else, you'll have to bypass that security. So for example, for our customer, they were using Microsoft Mimecast, which was blocking the actionable messages in email. So that is why users weren't able to approve from the email. And one more thing, like there is also a Power Automate mobile app, which users can install on their mobile and provide their decisions from the mobile app itself if the email security can't be changed to allow the user to provide their decisions from the email. So yeah, so there are two options. One is use Power Automate app or bypass email security to allow users to approve from the emails. Okay, so here the difference you see, this is approving from the email, and these are just buttons which will redirect user to the Power Automate approvals. All right, so then there are also like the Power Automate flows would time out in 30 days. And if your approvals are long running, it may have to wait on approvers, for example, 60 days or more, or 30 days or more. then your flow, your like approval will become orphaned. So and then your flow will also time out, and you'll have nothing to handle. If you have not handled that, then you are stuck there. Nothing will happen. Or for example, you may have to restart the workflow again for that record. So what you can do is you can add a parallel action to the flow, which has a logic to restart the flow from where it left. So for example, you have 3 levels of approval and your flow timed out at the second level. So you may want to store that, okay, my flow is on second level somewhere in your database or SharePoint. And then you have to add parallel action, which will execute on flow timeout and restart the workflow from where it left. So you'll have to query your database and see that, okay, where the flow was last on last stage, and then retry and start the flow from there. So yeah, you'll have to implement your custom logic. So there are a lot of kind of content available in Microsoft Docs as well as YouTube videos, which one of the reference I have included here of on how to kind of like make your approvals last beyond 30 days. So yeah, so this is one of the most important factor for your approvals implementation, because in real scenarios, you're like if you see business scenarios, you can kind of force the user to complete something within 30 days, and you don't want to lose the data, and you don't want to kind of have the approval restart again, and then approvers who already provided their decision to provide it again. So not a good user experience. So something you will have to implement as your custom logic within flows. Then it has limited delegation capability. So for example, if approver is on leave or on vacation, and then if you want your application to delegate the approval automatically to some other user, that is still not possible. Only as an approver you can reassign that approval to someone else. Not even as an admin or requester you can reassign an approval to someone else. So that's kind of a little shortcoming, that okay, if reassign is enabled, as an approver I can reassign, but not as an requester or an admin, or to be done it to or it to be done dynamically from or automatically. So yeah, so that's one of the shortcoming. And then there is a retry property within the settings of many of the actions in Power Automate. And if you are using the retry default setting for the approval section, sometimes what happens, it may mess up your approvals and send the same approval again and again to the users, especially in those timeout kind of scenarios where you have implemented your own logic. So you may want to set retry as none, just to be safe, that okay, same user does not get that approval again and again. So yeah, so that these are some like real world lessons that we learned, and like had to take care of while using Power Automate approvals. But still we got through those things, and we have applications that are running in production environment which are using Power Automate approvals and helping the users. So yeah, it does have some shortcomings and limitations, but there are ways to get around it using the alternatives and custom logic implementation within flows, and you'll be able to get through it. So yeah, here are some references which I used for preparing the content of my session, which you can refer to. And yeah, that was about it. Yeah, so as I had kind of like a lot of demos and a lot of content, I ran through it, but if there are any questions, I'm open to answer any of the questions. And like you are not restricted to just ask the questions right now. You can always contact me on LinkedIn, Twitter, if you run into like any roadblocks during implementation, and try using the Power Platform communities. That those are really helpful. Like the people out there are very helpful if you are running across any issues or need some suggestions. And with that, I would call it an end. And I would again thank you for your time on a Wednesday evening on learning something. All
Thank
right,
you
over
so
to you,
much.
Rashmita.
Thank you, Anna, so much for the session, and thank you all for joining us today. Please do share your feedback about today's session, and also feel free to use the Learn module link shared in the chat section. This will give you access to additional resources to take your learning further. Also, please visit our Microsoft Reactor Bengaluru meetup for more upcoming session. Thank you all once again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.